It's a short
Looking
tail,
forward to it.
luckily, but it is a tail nonetheless.
Like a duck tail.
A tale of woe.
Well, I'm here for it, man.
Good tales, good tales. No worries, no worries. Because that's all they are. They're just fucking stories, you know. And without the full spectrum, what would we have to talk about? Really,
It's a fantastic point. You make good points, sir. You make good points.
And here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Social. I wanted to start it that way because I haven't done that in quite some time, and it just felt right. So here we are for an episode of Dualistic Unity Social, and I got it in twice. I figured I'd start this off with, I guess, a moment of thought that I was going through earlier today, because I know that sometimes it sounds like Ray doesn't go through this stuff, and that's not it at all. But it's kind of this. So this morning, I woke up and I realized that there were responses to the comments left by the guy who had been pummeling the crap out of my comments and in my DMs last week. Anybody who doesn't recall that whole fiasco, you will find more of that in the Dualistic Unity Social from last week, which will be published tomorrow. Anyway, point is that I have blocked this person because they just kept hammering me with this insistence that not only are we the same, but somehow I need saving, which is really funny because that says a lot in itself. We're the same. You need saving. Like I think I need saving, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, somebody had left a video response to that person saying, I think you've got a point. The bald guy is obviously insecure, and that's why he keeps responding to you. And I saw the video and I went, okay. And that was it. And I just went, okay. And there was a part of me that's like, well, you could respond, but why? Like, why even get involved? It's not a conversation that has anything to do with me whatsoever. It's a conversation between them. And so I figured, well, I should just unblock the guy because otherwise he can't see the comment. He can't see the video that was made in response to his comment. And a part of me went, do I want to do that though? Am I opening up the floodgates once again to the same conversation that I had more or less said, that's enough of that last week? And I could have kept going back and forth about it. And I think this is the funny part, is because part of me is like, yeah, because of this. And part of me is like, no, because of this. And I just went, yeah. And I left it at that. And I just stopped thinking about it. Very shortly after, I got pummeled by a bunch of comments by that same person, of course, but they were at least public this time. The point being is that it's not like I don't go through these back and forth thoughts. I just don't meander for very long. Like I don't just sit there kind of loitering in indecision going, well, which one's the right one? Because there is no right one. There is no right choice there. I could choose to keep the guy blocked and never deal with it again, or unblock him. And either way, I'm not in any more danger, because what is there to threaten? I mean, he's going to leave a bunch of comments and self-validate and do that whole thing, and I'm going to respond, and he's going to get uncomfortable, and then it's going to build this intensity to the point where I have to block him again, and so on and so forth. But the fact is that something's going to happen regardless. Maybe not even involve him. Maybe there's something else that's going to happen regardless. But the point is that things happen regardless, and I don't necessarily have to go out of my way to avoid them. You know, but that said, there's nothing wrong with doing so either, because there's no right choice. And that's where you can just go, I made a choice, and let it be, without beating yourself up or regretting or comparing yourself to some fictitious person who would have made another choice. You don't have to hold all of that stuff. You don't have to focus on it. Right? You can just let it go. Just make your choice and let it go. And that's really it. So it's not that I don't go through this stuff. It's just that I don't put myself through it for very long. You know, it's very much like my philosophy about getting home, looking at your receipt from grocery shopping and recognizing that they charged you an extra $2 for bacon. And you're like, oh God, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get this $2. See, to me, I'll just give $2 not to have to do that. Right? Because that's time and wasted energy for what? For what? Just to feel like I've got my money? You're going to waste more money going to spend the gas to get the $2. Like it's just to end your time, and there's all of this. And yeah, so a lot of the thoughts in your head, I mean, You're just going to keep going back and forth if you think that there's a right choice. You'd be surprised how often your first choice is exactly the right choice. How many times have you second guessed your way into a dumpster fire?
Oh, my fair share. My fair share. Absolutely. Going back and forth. Even like with a way to walk or something, like based on where to go. Like that's been yeah, certainly a theme throughout my life as I look new things is just going back and forth with stuff. And it's all because I thought it's like a right answer, but a right answer is just like something outside of yourself doing something for you, like because of this thing, because of this choice, because of this finding the right answer, like therefore I'm more right. Like, and how many right answers I can make makes me correct. And like whether it's the way that you act or the things that you say or the way that you dress or the, you know, thing in a conversation, when you're having small talk or something and not just saying something, not just speaking, because there's so much weight put on that. Like and like empowerment that's dropped from thinking that some decision is going to do something for you, thinking that it's going to make me something instead of me being the thing, just doing it, just jumping in to things and new things and trying new things and seeing my experience not something that can be measured or judged even, but just experience. And how much experience am I having? Like how much variation in experience am I having? Not trying to do the right thing or feel the right way even. And just not so much focus on myself and how I'm doing because it isn't necessary. Like I don't have to have like a second track as I go through things to try and wonder, figure out, am I doing things right or correctly? Like there is no correct. There's no right. Period. Because as soon as there's a right, there's a wrong. As soon as there's a correct, there's an incorrect. As soon as those are in play, there's you can spend your entire life trying to figure out what that is. And then you can have one right way and then a bunch of things branching off of that. And it's all circling around yourself, how you see yourself, and even just maintaining a perspective of yourself, like maintaining a point of view of yourself. Absolutely. That was what I did, like moving back to New York, you know? And like I'm now realizing how much that was the case and how little nature there is here, how much I don't need anything or I'm not trying to get somewhere and like feeling everything around me. Like so much more because I see that as me, like my interactions are me. Like I'm not like I've been testing out and I might make a video about this, like go like 3 days straight not look in the mirror. And I talked about this recently and like today I accidentally did like when I was in the bathroom and the rest of the day like it just was like it wasn't even a consideration and I mentioned this last week or the week before and like it's funny like admitting vanity like that but I don't think it's uncommon and well then again just assumption maybe I'm the only one who looks in the mirror from time to time. All right, I'll stop going on that thing. But like I haven't as much and it's like a weird sort of discomfort in uncertainty because like you go back to old stuff. It's like I had a line part pushed like checking. Oh, this strand. Yeah, there we go. Oh, how's what's going on? Like I remember in because I used to like love popping zits on my face. And I remember in middle school or high school, like seeing a kid with like a big white head on his forehead and or on the side of his face or something. And like I would have noticed that so quick. And I didn't say anything, but I remember having a thought about that. Like, how do they not like see that or check that? And now looking back, it's like maybe they just like didn't look in the mirror when they got up. And so, we're trying to do things like love ourselves and build ourselves up. And it's like it's all reinforcing the thing that's causing the conflict, the focus on trying to control ourselves to being something or looking a certain way, thinking that's any degree of a guarantee of anything.
It's funny because it's kind of a luxury afforded to us by virtue of working for ourselves, but there is usually some pressure in regards to how you look. But for me, for example, um, I don't like. You'll notice that I get scruffy like regularly. Like I'll shave, and then I just won't. And sometimes it'll get like way longer, and sometimes it'll get kind of shorter, and then I'll shave. And it's not that I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting scruffy, I should shave. It's because it's starting to itch, or it's starting to just bug me a little bit, and it's a functional thing. But it's not as a result of me looking in the mirror and going, oh, I'm not looking very presentable. It's the beauty of being on a podcast, by the way. The video versions of this are fucking optional. You don't have to be looking at us. The point is, though, is that why should that be a problem? Why would that be a problem? Don't you find that funny? Like, as animals, we're like, you shouldn't have so much hair. Just on this part of you, though, because we're looking at it. Don't worry about the rest. It seems really weird. And so, outside of, again, the necessity where, and I know I've had jobs where people are like, oh, you haven't shaved in a few days. It's like, yeah, I work in a call center, and they're like, well, but we got to be professional. It's like, so you don't like how I look, or rather, you don't feel comfortable not shaving yourself. Right. And it's this whole thing, and it's ridiculous at the end of the day. But again, can't really complain if you're going to go and work in those places. And so I did anyway, but it didn't really do anything. But it did inspire me to venture into entrepreneurship. And so for anybody who is going through the indecision, the going back and forth of, God, do I really want to keep working for other people? I suggest that you just dig in to something, whatever it is, a hobby, something that you are intensely interested in, um, whatever it might be, and it will lead somewhere else. But anything that you build as a result of your enthusiasm, your focus on it in your life, eventually may in fact replace that job. Right. But it really is just do it for you. And I mean this because, like, I've coached a lot of people who started businesses, and the problem that they often have is if they're not seeing success in the first year or 2 years, they're just like, it's not working. Right. But most businesses fold within the first 3 years, and the businesses that don't are the ones that succeed. Right. And that's really just it. But if you're looking at it as, no, I'm doing this to get out of the hell of my work, that is different than doing it because it reflects something you love. That is different than doing it because it reflects something that you are. Right. In which case, if you're doing it for that reason, doesn't matter. You'll juggle a job and the thing that you love for as long as you can until finally you're like, should I take the leap? Should I take the leap? And then you do. And then it's fucking hard as hell. But nonetheless, you're like, yeah, but it's on my terms. It's for the reasons that are mine rather than the reasons that everybody else seems to be digging into, right? Like fame, fortune, recognition, all that shit. I'm doing it for my freedom. And this is why I say I don't work for money. I work for time. Because that's all I was ever doing was selling my life 1 hour at a time. Right. And so the price is too high.
Yeah. Yeah. And because, like, I've mentioned this more recently, just like how I'm feeling more like, or I am feeling like, which is like kind of absurd that I haven't before, but again, irrelevant. Like, just more like almost solo ownership for everything that we're doing with Dualistic Unity and like the projects that we work on. And like I was editing our episode, or I finished that season, season 6, episode 19 with Stephanie Corden. Really, really awesome episode. And we're talking about trust and, like managers being the first person to trust their subordinates or people who are working under them. And that expression like indicates to them that they can trust themselves. And so, not to say that you're my manager, dude, but like, you've been through a lot of business experience and I haven't as much. It's just like an experience thing more so. And I'm just starting to get a sense that like, and not just starting to get a sense, but I've always looked around for someone to tell me that like, double check something or like, oh, is this okay? Is this right? Is this blah 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 blah? And people will push that. Like there's a big push to look around for advice. You should. It's important to look around for advice. That's being considerate. That's taking in all of the options. That's taking in all of the factors. It's it's vital actually because you want to make a good decision, right? You want to make the right decision. It's like, hold up. There's no such thing as a good decision. There's no such thing as a right decision. So, like, which thing is going to actually set me up best for being able to handle the decision once I make it? Well, of course, it would be making it myself. Of course. If I'm looking around to make the decision, and I'm looking around for other people to weigh their perspectives, which aren't objective, and a bunch of perspectives aren't more objective. You take in all the perspectives, that's just a bunch of random perspectives that are no more correct or less correct than your own. And a bunch of them will just take up more of your time. And then it cuts you and your faith in yourself down quite a bit. And so, more recently, I've just been cool with like not asking around anyone for anything, like whether it's business stuff, whether it's life stuff, whether it's anything. And it's fascinating how much overlap there is with having faith in yourself, not looking around so much, and feeling more relaxed, like feeling more free, like it compounds and it impacts me moment to moment, like on a call like this. Like I'm not trying to say the right thing so much anymore. I look back on older episodes and like I had go-tos, I had things that I'd said before and just kind of like habitual responses. And it's like now I just feel like I'm actually like very much in reality in a lot of ways. And it's all over the place, but it's like I'm actually involved. And the although it's uncertain, like walking out of my apartment without looking at myself in the mirror at all, it's like I wouldn't trade that relaxation for anything and lack of concern. It's not about trying to control how things go. It's just not being concerned so much with how you go and not even, taking that second degree to try and measure or try and be sure because you can't.
It's interesting because if I was the kind of person who was looking for some sense of certainty in my own life, like if I wanted to feel good about myself, for example, micromanaging you or anybody else who worked with me would just be a response, right? Like I need to be in there. I need to feel like I'm in control, right? And the whole point is that who do you want to work with? Like Dualistic Unity is a perfect example, right? Everybody who's involved with Dualistic Unity are involved because they just started putting in the time unasked. I think they just started putting in the time. They're just like, hey, can I take over that for you? Right? Or hey, I have an idea. Do you mind if I do this? And we're like, yeah. I mean, not every idea. We're like, yeah, but again, everybody involved is involved because they decided to be. And that says volumes about them as people. And because I know I'm not necessarily easy to work with as an entrepreneur, this is something I was very, very aware of. And it's because of exactly that. Like, I don't micromanage. I delegate. Sure. I'm like, hey, you mind doing this? I don't want to fucking do this. I got enough shit on my plate, But aside from that, I don't micromanage. And so a lot of times people are like, well, what do I do? Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? And anybody who knows me well knows I don't like answering your questions. Like, there's a serious part of me that's like, why the fuck am I thinking for you? Like, the whole point is for you to think for you. And so that's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But the people it doesn't rub the wrong way are the people who are like, that's a good point. Let me get back to this and I'll let you know what I figure out. And but it's just being willing to have faith in them, even if they don't. And that comes across as not being compassionate because you don't want to hold their hand. But I know this as a parent. In order for your kid to become independent and strong, you got to stop needing to hold their hand all the time because that's more about you than it is about them. And so for me, this organization flourishes and grows based on the intensity and the enthusiasm that the individuals bring to it rather than me looking for the right team to do the right things and getting in there and making sure they delegate. I don't even know what the fuck is happening half the time. I touch base with some of the other people in our group. I'm like, what's happening? You did what now? Holy shit. Well, that's awesome. All right, we'll use that. And that happens a lot, and I love that because I mean it would be brutal to have whatever this is limited to me, to whatever I could come up with. That just sounds fucking boring. It really does. Unless, again, you really need to make it about you, in which case that's what it'll be. It'll be about what you reflect in your own mentality, a need for control, the need for importance, a need, to feel like and other people don't, that you would do it better, and so on and so forth. Right. And so, yeah, no, I like the organic nature of just because, again, like the entire idea of management just irks me. Like it's just managing people. Like, excuse me, what the fuck? Like it like working with them, right? Establishing a relationship, being aware of that relationship, sure, having certain responsibilities, that's managing tasks and workloads and things like that. But some managers actually think they're managing people. And that doesn't make it much different from slavery. At least that's certainly how it feels when you work for those fucking people.
Yeah, and it's like, people say voluntary slavery, but when you look at everything going on, it's like kind of a not kind of like very much a necessity, and there's limitations and there's so many things. It's kind of like what they did with COVID in a lot of ways with the vaccine and stuff. It's not like it was absolutely forced. It's not like it was a requirement and everyone had to do it, but they limited your life so much that so many people like it really didn't take much limitation. Like for me, can't go to the gym without it. That was my part. Now, would I have much more that wouldn't, push me to do that? Um, yeah, and that's where I was at. That's where I was at then. So with that though, like even the thought of managing someone else, like it's just a self-importance thing and thinking that you're in control and you know what's best. It's like, how the fuck could you possibly? And you're willingly taking more weight on. Like I even at my last job, like when someone new would start and I would be like their mentor or something, they'd put an email together and I wouldn't really change much. Sometimes I'd point some things out and just like some considerations. But, when I was first starting, I would send, we'd have to send like a draft of an email when we were training or whatever. And like someone would change it a bunch and it would just sound like that. And it would just like now be in their tone. And it's adding time to their stuff just for a trade of feeling like now it's better. Like now there's a guarantee, more of a guarantee that that person who's getting the email is going to respond in a certain way. And I've always maintained some of that, and it's a spectrum, you know. Like there's some, and typically for me it was like pleasantry, like, you know, stay pleasant in responses and like nice things. And you know, it's like the classic someone shits on you, and I didn't really do this, but I see it all the time when someone will shit on you in the comments, and then it will just be like, "I love you," or like, have a glorious day, peace, love, and light, XOXO, kissy face," and like you can take that far enough that it's kind of sarcastic and kind of funny. But I see it a lot where it's like skewing towards pleasantry, and it's like an avoidance of looking at that. Like, it's just, oh, end of that, instead of that being a conversation, you know, instead of that being a back and forth. And most people commenting just trying to self-validate. They won't even ask they won't even ask a question. They'll just say something, and then they get a response, and there's almost sometimes a frustration or a surprise, or they're surprised that they got a response, like, "What? You commented, though." It's like, because you didn't wanna actually have a discussion. You just wanted to validate yourself. You just wanted to validate your perspective. You just wanted to put it out there and say something about it, and it's like, "No, we can have a conversation." That's how growth happens, like, via conversation, via interactions. Like, that's how, and I'm trying to think of, like, a brain neuron, but, like, you know, neurons are connecting and disconnecting all the time, and so everything, everything from conversations to social media comments to, you know, any sort of interaction or any way that you live your life is an opportunity to do something. Like, it's always opportunity to express yourself and whatever's there, and almost like express it uncapped. And like, how capped is that? Because more recently, I've just been responding with what's there. And like in the past, maybe I would put like an emoji or like an exclamation and a point, and I'm just not anymore, because I would go back to like add that to make it sound like fucking nicer or something. I'm like, I don't have to do that. I can just respond, be done, and it takes like 10% of the time, because it can just be boop boop, and I'm starting to get more of a sense of, you know, not that I know your experience with things, but just like taking the time.
I antagonize people with emojis for sure.
Just like the time you save in that, in not trying to cater. I'm not saying you don't use emojis. I just mean you don't try and sound pleasant, because it's like it takes extra time and energy to try and maintain nice, pleasant. And it's like, you don't know if that's what that person
Now that's a funny point though.
needs.
It only takes time and energy if the other person's being a dick, right? Like it's the whole thing. Lots of people leave comments on my videos. Lots of people leave comments in general, and I respond to them like, "Hey, yeah, that's awesome. Good point. Yeah, great. Thanks. Have a great day. Blah blah blah." Like everything's fine until somebody's coming in like, "No." It's like, all right. It's like, here comes the laughing emoji, you know, and it's you know, as well as the comment and response because that shit's funny. You know, straight up. Like I like giving the emojis that I'm actually seeing as an internal response. Like if my mood had a response, that's why often my response is the winking emoji because I often find that shit funny.
People don't like the winking emoji at all. That might be the most, it's like equally the most like unthreatening and threatening at the same time. If someone's looking, but they have to see it in a certain way, and they like read it because they know their comment is absurd deep down somewhere. It's like it's in there, and it just got exposed. It just got exposed. That's all it was. And like, if you were to respond, like, naturally you felt a response like that, and then you didn't do it, it's like, that's it's almost like, it's not almost, like, it's selfish. It's selfish, because it's like, well, but if they respond and they feel bad, then I feel bad, and I don't wanna feel bad, but I don't know if them feeling bad isn't what's best for them. Like, we have this immediacy of, like, feeling good and feeling bad, but the immediate feel good, majority of the time, reinforces the underlying feel not so good, feel more imprisoned, you're suffering, and we just get hits. It's like just a little hit, feeling good, and it's just pounding on the perspective of ourself and self-judgment. It's just like that's where we're at. It's just like feel good or feel bad right now instead of that not being my priority.
Just feel, right? Just feel with awareness. It's really it, and that kind of changes the swing of what you're feeling because it's with awareness. Right? It's like anything else. The more attention you put into it, the more detail you start to take in, right? The more your intelligence is at play. Same is true for the emotional spectrum. But we try to run from it. We try to feel better, and like you said, we want to be pleasant. And why do we want to be pleasant? Because we think pleasantry is the best thing for us as well. And so we want to be pleasant to everybody else, that way we can appear pleasant and all that crap. And then after the fact, we're like, I don't know that that actually did anything, because you'll notice there are a lot of pleasant assholes. Like there are people who will be pleasant right over the top of all that judgment and toxicity. And then look at you and go, what? But I'm being polite. It's like, yeah, but we can feel the intensity. We can feel where that shit's coming from. Like you're being polite on the surface while underlyingly, being forceful and abrasive, but it's all under the veneer of being polite. And so I look at it this way. It's just another one of those, I guess, places that you can hide in, because it feels pleasant. But the reality is you're just avoiding yourself. You don't always have to feel pleasant. Like I'll give you a perfect example. This morning, I got up. I was feeling kind of fucking funky, and what I mean by that is I wasn't feeling up or down. I was just kind of feeling resigned, like just and it's not like the day isn't beautiful. It's beautiful, sunny, gorgeous day, right? I just wasn't feeling anything in terms of ups and downs. I went for a walk and it was just kind of a meh kind of vibe. And at one point I would have been like, oh, I gotta feel better. I gotta, boost myself up. I gotta play some music. I gotta do all that. And I was just like, why? Why? Just let it be what it is. Why am I so determined to engineer my emotional state according to my preferences when I don't even understand my emotional state? Like I feel like I'm interfering with something that's probably helping me. And so I just kind of let it do its thing. I just stayed there and went for a walk and got back. And as soon as I stopped focusing on it, like it was a problem, it faded away. It faded away. And then I got back and I did some dishes and I stretched. And slowly, gradually, I felt different, because that's the point, right? Is that you're always going to, unless you're holding on to it and focusing on it, making it a fucking problem. I got to get out of this. And all of a sudden you're reinforcing that. This is, again, like the gentleman that was commenting on all my videos last week. They made a video today because, again, I unblocked them. So I got to look about how, you look around at the world and all you see is suffering and misery. And it's like, no, you look around the world and all you see is suffering and misery. Like, that's the whole point. Like, you're telling us what we're seeing, but you're just telling us what you're seeing, or rather what you're focused on. Right? Which isn't to say that you should ignore the part of it that is suffering, but, to form that level of tunnel vision just because of a preference for the opposite, just encourages it. It just perpetuates it, because then you end up in a mentality where you must force people to do what you think is the right thing so we can all get out of that suffering that you can't stop focusing on. And that is a lot of where the suffering comes from, is that forceful mentality that thinks it knows the right fucking way. And it's focused on the suffering too, rather than just understanding it. This is a big conversation about, the ego I've been having the last few days with a few people. It's like, no, we got to get out of the ego. It's like you only feel that way because you don't understand it. right? Like it's the root of your suffering. So you're like, I need to escape that shit. You can't. It's your ticket to ride. The perspective of division is why you can feel like you're here at all doing anything. You know, the fact that you can convince yourself that you're in control at all is a fucking gift, right? But if you don't look at it for what it is and recognize how much you can get it carried away with that illusion, how much you can get carried away with the perspective of division, it'll just corrupt your life, right? But it's not about getting away from it. It's about understanding it. You know, in the same way that it's not about not drinking alcohol or not drinking coffee or not smoking a joint. It's not about any of that. It's doing it with awareness of why you're doing it and what it's going to do. You know, and that's it. That's all. When we're interacting with these thoughts about ourselves, tread softly. That's really it. Just tread softly. Don't try to escape your ego. That in itself is the ego, and that's the funniest part. It's like, we're gonna get out of the ego. It's like that entire motivation is ego driven because there's an I that's choosing to get out, right? And so you're not. You're just reinforcing the very thing that's making you suffer because you can't stop focusing on it. I don't know how I got onto that tangent. I know we have about 8 minutes left here, but I wanted to stop very shortly, very quickly for a short period of time. That sounded much better, and remind all of you that we have a retreat coming up, less than a month now in California, Big Bear. We only have 2 tickets left for this. One is a single bunk, which is going to be dope, and then the other one is a king bed on the top floor in a shared room with some other dope people. This is a sleepover. Do consider it that way. It is a sleepover with the dopest people doing the dopest shit. Like we're just hanging out, being ourselves. We really are. But that said, keep in mind, this is a sleepover with friends, right? And so a sleepover with platonic friends. And this is really important to keep in mind. And I wanted to mention this because occasionally it does happen that somebody within the community has a crush on someone else within the community, and sometimes that gets brought to the retreat, and then of course they end up getting frustrated, or they end up disillusioned, or they end up trying to pursue that and find that it's just not matching the vibe that everybody else is there with. And so I just wanted to throw this out there. First of all, come to the retreat. We have one in California, as I said. We also have a 420 friendly retreat coming up in Colorado on May 30th. The tickets for that are now publicly available. Back to what I was saying though, if you do have feelings for somebody in the community, if that is something that you want to discuss with them, do it after the retreat, or do it like way before the retreat if you're confident you're able to deal with whatever the fallout of that might be at the retreat. But I would encourage you to just keep it to the private, keep it to the outside of the event, right? Because this is not something that the event is for. It's not for you to make a romantic connection. It's not for you to find somebody to lean on or attach to. It's for you to work on yourself. It's for you to be by yourself with other people who are being by themselves. And just like that, we're spending time alone together. And that is why it's so empowering. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I know we got this retreat coming up, and sometimes there's mixed emotions and people don't understand that, that's something that we don't have a problem with you having those emotions, but there's a time and place, and that time and place is not at the retreat.
No, it is not. And if anything like that does happen, the retreat is a fantastic place to ask yourself why, ask yourself what the intention behind any thought of something happening would be like. But yeah, no, platonic friends. So just so we're absolutely clear, for sure. But I'm very excited for California. I've just been feeling a lot different for sure, and kind of realized that with our job now, like we do a lot of stuff, but throughout it, like my underlying job is to be myself. Like that's kind of the extent.
I would even say that comes first.
Yeah. And like I can't prepare to do that. And so it's actually more important, like job description, like be yourself, don't prepare. and keep doing stuff. Because I still like there will still be thoughts of preparation, like for a call. And it's not to say when we have a guest, like I won't look them up and look up some stuff, but just to get a sense for it. And so just being there in the experience, and it's been really interesting to see that there's stuff here. Like there's stuff to think and say and do, and as long as I'm trying to prepare for something, it's like it's diluting it and diluting it and covering it and covering and covering and covering it. And it isn't it's like it's like authentically a more veiled version of myself, but it's not really fully wholeheartedly. And so the less like it's actually important to not try and prepare even moment to moment, like as I'm listening to someone trying to prepare a response, like why would I try to do that? What am I trying to prove? What am I trying to show? What am I trying to express? If I'm just expressing myself, then I can't prepare for that. You can't prepare to be yourself at all whatsoever. You can only do it. You can only be it. And that's not what you're thinking about. It's just whatever you're expressing, like whatever you're doing, like right now. It's you being yourself. And how much do you think that it should be something else or you need to prepare for all of these reasons? And like, I've had so many reasons, and I feel like I've been almost letting go of all the reasons that I thought I needed to prepare or be something. And so there aren't quite it. And, maybe there's still plenty left. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like there's as many left, which is cool.
It certainly frees up a lot of time and energy and thought, right? Because that's the whole point, is that's where creativity comes from. It's from just expressing yourself. If you're trying to express, well, perfect example, if I were to say, hey, I'd like you to paint something that is a representation of your emotional state right now in real time, and you're like, well, hold on, I need to prepare. If you were to prepare, you'd prepare based on your previous emotional states, right? So it wouldn't actually be expressing yourself at all. So, in order to be able to actually create art that actually expresses you, you have to do it in real time, which means you have to be on the very edge, right? Enjoying reality as the crest of the wave, as it were. We had a question here. If you by chance know what are your guys' Myers Briggs personality types, I don't remember, but we did do an episode on that. And I know I already provided the link in the chat section, but you could look it up. Just go Dualistic Unity personality tests in Google, and it will bring you to Podbean or whatever your podcast platform is. And we discuss our test results at the time, as well as our perspective on personality tests as a whole, and indeed personality. It's a pretty dope episode, actually. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for bringing that up. We have about 2 minutes left. I want to remind everybody, in 15 minutes, we're going to be doing a roundtable episode. We actually have members of the community that will be joining us on the screen to record this episode. This is our 32nd roundtable episode. So I am very excited for it. You can join us. Go to YouTube Live or twitch.tv/Dualistic Unity, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We do this every 2 weeks. And then next week at the same time, we do a call-in show. So if you'd like to participate there, you can definitely do that.
I'm trying to find a Twitch link. Like, where the fuck is it? Or anything. Oh, we don't have that. That's fair. That's very fair. Yeah. It's not hard to find. It's in my bio for anyone on Instagram or TikTok. We can't do it all. We can't. It's like there's an adventure in that. Finding the link to Twitch. That's a whole experience right there. You're gonna click different buttons. You're like, wait, oh, that was the wrong one. Go down some path and then be like, all right, let me try this other one. And then you might come across, oh, they have a podcast and there's episode 1 linked right in Andrew's Instagram bio. I'll check that out too. I've been curious about some stuff. And there you go. And now you're listening, and then you can join our free group tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, public group. But this has been fun, man. It's been a blast.
We really do have a lot of shit going on. It's fun. Absolutely. Feel free to check out our schedule, by the way, dualistiCunity.com. You can check under the drop down, there's a group schedules link with Google Calendar that you can download and put it on your phone, so you know when all this shit's happening. But somebody's just asking if we're talking about bread. Unfortunately, the conversation about bread has ended. It never really existed, quite frankly. That said, join us in 15 minutes if you can. We'll see you for an episode of Dualistic Unity, roundtable number 32. I'm going to stop babbling and we'll just sign off here.